Welcome everybody back to Brown and Browner, the post NFL draft, NBA playoffs, and everything in between session that we want to call. Didn't play today.
Yeah,
I think my colleague and I have made it pretty clear over the last few months that we are tired of talking about the NFL draft for so long. We're glad it happened. We're glad it took place. We're glad the round one is done. Yes, there's some minor drama to talk about, but honestly, the topic we want to talk about, the NBA playoffs.
I think it has more relevance at this time. As you mentioned, the draft has its importance, but at the same time, a lot of speculation. And most of what happened in the draft, with the exception of, we'll talk about that later, Jacksonville and trading up, sort of happened the way they've been talking about it for the last, I don't know how many weeks. And Shador, you got that dollar sign. You're going to have to get a smaller dollar sign now because you're not in the first round. But let's hit the playoffs. So one of the things, first off, before we talk about the playoffs, I did read something this morning that Shannon Sharpe is dropping off off his shows. He has a podcast as well as the Stephen A. Smith show. Jackson, excuse me. Because a lady said that he raped and dominated her and anally abused her and a lot of other things. I don't know who's right or wrong in the case.
Right.
Of course, everyone's posturing. One person says they're being set up and blackmailed. The other one says, no, this happened. Either way, it's just sad to hear that these things are happening. Again, what the truth bears out, we'll find out. But it just, made me think about all of the other things that I had heard about athletes who really did do some horrible, nasty things to people because they have favor, money, access. And I just hope that we find something different here. But I hope that people don't just dismiss anything that a woman may claim when it comes to being physically abused, sexually abused by a man, because yes, it does happen, and it happened quite a bit in our history, and it was always overlooked and overshadowed and poo-pooed and dismissed. Let's not do that. Let's find out all the facts and do the right thing, because if that really did happen to the lady, she's entitled to, one, be heard, two, to some type of retribution, compensation, whatever, because that's humiliating and degrading, and it should never happen.
No, I echo the same sentiments. And I'll say that, it does go both ways. Yes, the majority of time it happens to women rather than men, but, vice versa, equal say in that. But at the same time, not to put light on the situation by any means, but why is this always happening to whoever's the co-chair with Stephen A. Smith? You've seen a succession line that, not this particular incident of harassment, but you got Michael Irvin had to step down because of his things, Everybody that's taken that seat in different fashions over the last 3, 4, 5 years has had some sort of, little issues here and there. And not to make light of anything of it, but it's just, it's very weird that that's happening in a single sentence. Now, conversely, Fox Sports has their own issue, they've got the Joy Taylor issue and all that going on as well. So, hey, a lot of these celebrities are not immune from potentially being targeted. I'm not playing defense by any means. But, a lot of these people are in prominent positions. There are targets for things. Conversely, I say take better care when you're in such a position. Yes, there is a societal thing where, the more prominent you become, the more risk you also take on in society, I feel. And, we would like to think that it would work the other way, but it really doesn't. So it's just one of those things where, with great power comes great responsibility, right? We always say that. And in this instance, it's much the same. And again, like we try to harp here, be respectful to your human man or to your fellow man, one way or the other, doesn't matter.
And that's what, for me, this is really about. But you're right. And there have been cases where people thought that they could pressure someone this type of visibility and celebrity to pay them money to, they set them up. But I don't want to say that this is this case at all, but we have seen that in the past. And again, we'll see what the truth bears out. But it is a shame that we do seem to see this happen quite often. And you're right. When you are a celebrity, when you do gain fame and fortune, you do become a target. You do have people who may have access to you who might not have your best intentions in their mind and in their actions. So you do have to protect yourself. And I was just talking to my wife, and she mentioned this. One of the reasons why, you know, she started not liking Michael Jordan as much is because he complained that, you know, he didn't like the fact that when he goes out, there was always somebody following him and he can't have his privacy. Well, that's the price of fame and fortune, and more so fame, even if you don't get the fortune, is that you lose some of your privacy because people always want to have access to you.
Well, and that's the thing with the power, with the fame, and then the money, you gain access and control, and more importantly, the ability to do things that are outside perhaps your normal scope of things to do. And a lot of that is trouble, unfortunately. And that's why you have people that are hired as shadows and assistants and everything else in between. I mean, I hate to say it, there's an industry for it. We'd like to take on a consulting here between Brown and Browner for a minute.
Talk about that. Yeah, at the end of the day, you could protect yourself. You can do, and it may seem awkward, but honestly, if I'm exposed and have a risk like that, hey, I want to, one, there's a video camera right here. I just want to let you know.
Yes.
Two, I'd like you to sign something to say that this is consensual and in no way am I doing anything that you didn't intend for me to do.
Yep.
And three, you can't sit and try to profit off of this encounter by videotaping us and trying to blackmail me or send it off to somebody else. I'm sorry that, and maybe we don't end up having sex, so be it. But at least this way I'm protecting myself.
I hate to say it, with the power of fortune, whether it's sports, not sports, whatever it is, it becomes difficult to have relationships. I don't disagree. It's one of those things that it comes with the territory. That's where you do try to have the best influences around you, hopefully try to vet out things and support you in whatever way you can. Yeah, ultimately you are your own person. You should be making your own decisions. But at the end of the day, when you get to that level, you need extra support at times to make those better decisions, especially when you're confronted with every option in the world in front of you, to say the least.
Yeah, there's a lot of temptation when you have access.
Yes, absolutely. So no, I don't disagree. And it translates well to even the topic of the NFL draft. You know, many of these kids never had the guidance, support, anything of that nature to know what's ahead of them. And they're about to make multi-million dollars, as we saw yesterday in the first round of the NFL draft. What comes with that? We've seen the trouble stories. We've seen all the horror stories over many, many, many years and many, many different players in every realm. So all we can give is the best advice possible and say, hey, guys, look out for your bigger interests at the end of the day. You know, a lot of these guys are short-sighted. We've seen, you know, when they get money, power, fortune at a young age, they're spending, wheeling, dealing, everything else. They're not thinking, hey, 10 years from now, my career's over.
If that, if you get 10 years, depending on football, the average lifespan in football is not 10 years.
Exactly. Yep. So
no,
yeah,
and it actually reminds me of something funny, because you brought up a point that I do agree with. You know, when you do have that celebrity and that money, people around you, if they're not used to it, sometimes it can be overwhelming for them, and they want and they need and try their best to access it because they don't have it for themselves. When we were talking before about Mother Daniels,
yes,
and
her, you know what, Mother Daniels is a good figure.
Yeah, well, and seeing her son and Juju in the stands, and literally you could read her lips, and she's saying, "I saw you on the jumbotron. No, you're not going to." That's why we brought that up. I mean, it was funny, and I get the mother hen routine and protecting your kids as well. But that's where I think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Juju is a celebrity in as much as Jaden is as well, right? So why aren't you trying to promote that? Because if anything, one thing is eliminated. I am not worrying about this person being a gold digger.
Well, gold digger, yeah, financial obviously is a huge piece. Don't get me wrong. At the same time, you have two people who understand fame, who understand the risks of it, who have, at least as far as I can tell, been very responsible with it throughout their careers. So, everything positive in that light. So it's hard to take that one example and say, hey, this should be the gold standard. And it should be the gold standard, but it hardly ever is, unfortunately. But
right.
Yeah, Daniels, you can let up a little bit. This is a good thing, He could be with God knows what else on the road, on different road trips with the Commanders. You could think about all the potential horror stories there. He God forbid he could be Ant-Man.
Well, Ant-Man, Sean Kemp, you take your pick.
Yeah. Oh,
the temptation's out there, and trust me, the adoration of the fans, female fans, is going to be there. And I'm sorry, some of them are professionals at this. They go. Yeah. And this is a plan of action where they say these stars, whatever sport or whatever they do, are coming here. We're going to be out at that hotel. We're going to figure out a way to get access and see if we can go up to their room.
Build an IG profile. Step 2, possibly an OnlyFans. Step 3, hunt them down and go hunt down these hotels. Yeah, I mean, there's again, a prescription for it, especially.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. There's a different instance with Mike Tyson and such, and I remember that incident. Yeah. I don't know exactly what happened, but if there's a woman who's looking to be in your room late night, that is a flag.
Red flag. Yeah, red flag. Yep.
For both. As a woman, I wouldn't want to be in a guy's room late night, because if something, especially when they're famous and they have people who could hide the secret or the truth, wouldn't want to put myself in that situation, and vice versa. If I'm a man, I don't know if I'd want to be in that situation. Again, I'd have a camera, I have something to be signed. I'd make sure that I cover myself. So once it's over, you can't decide that, you know what, I know I am going to call you out and say that you raped me or whatever. Yeah.
Again, not to make light, not to defend Mike Tyson, but would you rather have some groupie, or would you rather have Don King in your room at 11 o'clock? I mean,
well, if Don King's in your room, he's the one raping you, but usually out of your pocket.
Yeah, it's financial rape. Yeah.
And again, not trying to belittle.
Yeah, we're not trying to make light of it,
or any of that stuff.
Again, we're just shedding light on the fact that all these rough things are out there for all these folks that take on the celebrity, take on the fame. With power comes, unfortunately, responsibility.
And that's exactly right. And you need to manage both of those things to be able to protect yourself and do the right things, and make sure that no one can bring harm to you if it's not something that you deserve. And on that, transitioning off. So there were 2 great games last night, but there was a serious trend. One of the things I thought was amazing, and for anybody who made the bet, I was just not smart enough to capitalize on it. I should have. There you go, my partner over there. It was incredible, and I told my son when Oklahoma City was down 30 for 29, I said, this game isn't over.
Yep.
And sure enough, they came back and won. I mean, the fact that they beat Memphis by 50 and then with Ja Morant, the first game led me to believe that no lead is insurmountable when it comes to that team.
That team has too many weapons, too much firepower, honestly, and they are built to win. I mean, they have a team culture there in Oklahoma City. And that's what I really relish the fact. Yes, they've got their starter. Yes, they got SGA. Yes, they got Homer. Yes, they got Dort. They got everybody. They got guys that know how to play their role on a team, and we've seen that in every sport. When that happens, you win championships. It's the recipe above else. I mean, you may have never even heard of who the coach is at Oklahoma City, but he's a great coach, clearly, because he got them to buy into a program and a thought that you will play your role, you will get your success. Simple as that. And that's all you can ask for in team sports.
And that's exactly right. And I think that means a whole lot more. And it's funny because a lot of teams try to go get that superstar and plug them in and say that's going to help us win. And they find that it doesn't necessarily do that, because team chemistry and the buy-in of the team concept that no one's above the team and we play for each other carries a lot more weight to me than a superstar who might get you 30 points. Hey, hello, Kevin Durant, but won't ever win you anything unless you already have something built in place, like Kevin Durant walked into the Golden State situation. So I love that. You don't need to know their names. These guys played for each other. They play hard. They didn't get down, and they were down 29-30. How many times have you seen teams on as they take timeouts and they're on the bench and they're arguing and yelling at each other? That's not happening there. And sure enough, they came back and they won that game. One thing that was a bad thing to see in that game, and we talked about this, and I'd like to bring this up. Are we seeing more of these flagrant fouls? And in these cases, in both of these cases, with Jimmy Butler and with Ja Morant, they look to be more accidental than purpose. No, Jimmy Butler, I'm not sure about that one. He could have done.
I've got questions on a little bit because I think it could have been avoided. Ja Morant's was very unfortunate, and not to defend the thing, but here's my 2 cents on this, and maybe this is where we kind of go into the conversation. Historically, I'm going to take the Warriors as an example here. So the Warriors, anytime they have been matched up more physically on defense, if your defensive strategy as the opposing team has been to shadow Steph, bump him, do everything you can to stop him, get under Draymond's skin, stop Clay from getting his position, play physical basketball, and to be ruthless in that manner, not in a bad way, but enough to where it gets under people's skin and do some dirty things once in a while. They do get caught on video, by the way. Then it's a defensive tactic, because I mean we've seen it in the 80s. We called that the Pistons back in the day, if you think about it. There is a limit to it in this day and age, and obviously it has been crossed over, I think, in these recent playoffs where we've seen a lot more dangerous injuries and things like that are happening because of the physical play that is either being allowed or not called or whatever it is.
And that was going to be one of my points about this, is that there are times that I feel like the referees allow these things to happen when you use the word allow. And the reason I say allow is this. It's not like they say, go ahead, hurt the guy. Right. But what they do is they allow them to be more and more physical throughout the game. And you can see that in the game last night, where there were fouls that could have been called and they weren't called. Easily. And if you continue to let that happen, the fouls become more aggressive and egregious. And before you know it, you end up in a situation like this. Now, the one thing that happened to Ja Morant, if you look at the play, the guy tried to chase down the lead ball player when it was a fast break 2-on-1. He bounced past it back to Ja, and as he went to turn around to try to then defend Ja, his legs actually gave out from under him. He like slipped or something. And because of that, he came in awkwardly at Ja. I think the thing that he could have avoided was when Ja went up and he was going to do one of these spectacular slams. Because the guy was stumbling, he tried to then, once he got his balance, he stood up while Ja was coming over his head. And that's what caused him to then fall flat on his face and on his hip. So I don't feel like that was intentional. I feel like that was more of an accident. I do think maybe he didn't need to stand up. When you know somebody's doing that to you, you sort of just lay there, stop. But at the same time, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, split second reactions, I can sort of see that. The one with Jimmy Butler, though, I think that was something totally different.
I think that was an avoidable play.
Yeah, I think that was, again, one of those overly physical plays that might have been a lead in because there was a lot of physical contact in that game prior to that. And that was only 8 minutes into the game.
Yes, agreed. No, and that's where I say, teams historically against the Warriors who have beaten the Warriors have played more physical. You can tell if you go back on the tape, you can see that people are checking Steph to where he can't get his turn, his position, his picks, anything like that. This time it's applied to all over. I mean, you could see this series is physical from Houston. I almost feel like Ime Udoka walked in and said, all right, Dylan Brooks, I want you to be Dylan Brooks. And everybody else also do your thing. And Dylan Brooks notoriously been that guy that gets under everybody's skin. He has
been. He was like that when he was on Memphis. I think that's why he's not on Memphis, because he's
basically Pat Beverly 2.0 at this point. I mean, he's that guy. You've got a lot of those guys, and those guys are role players on every team. Every team has got one. The Nuggets had Aaron Gordon. You could go around the league, and there's different ones.
Hey, one of the most famous ones was Dennis Rodman. He could play ball. Yeah, he could play ball. He was the guy that would get under your skin too and do all of those things. He wasn't the guy that was giving 2 points doing the physical work. He was the guy getting every single freaking board on the planet. Yeah. So I get it. I don't know. I mean, I have some feelings about that. Yeah, I get it. part of sports is psychological. You can get into someone's head. I get that.
Absolutely.
I still feel like there should be a cap to it. You know, like you can't just be walking around pulling people's things down, kicking them in the nuts, and then chirping in their ear, or like Stevenson did, you know, go kiss the guy. I think there should be a limit to what you can and can't do.
Well, that's where I say, like, a couple times, even in the Warriors Rockets series, they've caught Dylan Brooks, like he'll be on the floor, he might have fell on a play or something, or even Steph or whatever, and you can see this like little kick and, like, you know, little things after fouls, after plays are dead, stuff like that. Subtleties like that need to be stopped. And that's, I mean, I get that. Again, there is psychology to it. I don't disagree. But at the end of the day, if you want to protect the integrity of your product, NBA is what I'm kind of focusing here. You need to keep the game whole, especially if you're going to be a role model for today's youth. You know, that's my thing. Like, there is a clean way to play basketball and still be, you know, tactical and everything about it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
That's all. It's physical.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in nature, but it doesn't have to go over the board, and it doesn't need to be excessive.
Yeah,
where they just physical. It's not basketball.
No, as a fan, I mean, there's definitely cause for concern as to how these series are now going to play out in the NBA, you know, playoffs right now for this round one because of these key injuries. Now, I mean, granted, Oklahoma City did what they did yesterday. They came back from 30. Yeah, that series is over. We already know that. It's 3-0. I mean,
I would sit John now. I think if John would have been on the floor, that could have been a different outcome. However, that wasn't the case, and now Josh should sit. There's no need in putting him in the game to have anything else happen that could jeopardize his future.
Exactly. So I think at this point you play for the future if you're Memphis, and you know you're good to go. And I get that Memphis was also thinking that they could probably contend this year because they did make some good moves to, you know, get their roster going, and finally kept Ja out of the pew you know, situation. but you know, at the end of the day, this series is over and all that. Now Houston and the Golden State Warriors, that takes a whole dramatic turn now, unfortunately, because you don't have a Jimmy Buckets in there. The Warriors were kind of seen as a potential upset team at a 7-2 matchup, obviously. Yeah, Houston's obviously still great. I mean, don't get me wrong. But now you're talking about tide turning. It's 1-1 walking into Golden State tonight. I think it'll be an interesting game without Jimmy Buckets in. I don't know how much he's out at this point. I haven't looked far enough, but it's going to.
You know what? This is where you gotta avoid some of this the rush to get to be the first one to break a story, because I saw something when I turned my phone on that said that he was out for the rest of the playoffs. Then I saw something saying he's doubtful for game 3, but there's a potential that he could play. So who knows what the truth is.
Yeah, if anything, they'll leave the question mark looming before every game for the rest of the series. At the end of the day, I mean, Jimmy Butler is a competitor. We know that. He plays for the playoffs. He is him. You know, I think he'll try to come back. And could he come back from this injury? It's possible, but you know, we'll see where it goes at this point. It will be interesting to see how Houston. What I'm really curious to see now is, now that you got Jimmy Butler out, you played this physical game, the first 2 games. If you're Houston, are you going to continue down that same path of playing that physical? And honestly, I think it might get exposed negatively. That's my take right now, because you'll be so physical that it'll get exposed more because you don't have another star player on the court, where they're going to try to get under Draymond's, under Draymond's skin. They're going to physically try to beat on Steph more than they have in the first 2 games, and that may stand out to where it actually works against Houston. I could be wrong.
We'll see. I'm not sure that'll happen, but I wouldn't. If I'm Houston, I would do the same exact thing I've been doing. Unless the refs are calling a different game, you continue to be physical. They're young and inexperienced, but they have youth and strength and size on their side. I think that's what you try to capitalize on, especially when you're dealing with older players like Steph and Draymond Green. So, and you can easily get Draymond Green to get a technical call. You know, Draymond, he was good last night, or the other, was that last night or the other night, where they tried to goad him and he actually backed out. That was the first time I had seen Draymond back off. I was waiting for something to kick off with him, you know, grabbing people or whatever. So we'll see. How about the other side of the bracket? So we've seen, you know, the game. Oh, wait, let's just talk about the other few real quick before we go into the draft. So the Lakers bounce back. They look better the second game. Is this just a reaction that looks great when you from a commentary standpoint, but may just be a desperate attempt at the end of the day to not, look bad or get swept, because I feel like they look good that game. LeBron hasn't played his game, so they have some room to continue to grow. But I don't know. Are they going to win that series?
I think it's going to be a close series all the way down the stretch. It's going to be a 6 or 7 game series as to who can win. And so on paper, you would think that once LeBron can get going a little bit, they'll have the edge. I still have yet to see the chemistry all fall into play where you get a successful night with Luka, LeBron, and any other third player on the Lakers that you want to take your pick on. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing with the Lakers is they play small ball. So if they're cold one night, they're dead, basically. And that's how it works for them. Do the Timberwolves have enough firepower in the middle? Not really. I mean, Rudy Gobert's not going to put up 20 points, He's going to play defense. But,
but that's why they got Randall. I mean, Randall's supposed to be the guy scoring.
Julius Randle is going to be the X factor, I think. If Julius Randle can get up to scoring 20 points, then I think they can take this series in 6 or 7. Ant-Man's going to be Ant-Man. We know that. Nothing's going to stop him, and he's going to keep jawing and yapping and getting under everybody no matter what. Luka is going to be interesting because I think this is proving ground for Luka. He's always been the star-dominant player on the Mavs that we've known about in the playoffs and everything else. I have a feeling my personal take is he's a defensive liability. I think he's good, he's size and everything else, but I don't think he's a defensive superstar. And that's where if the Timberwolves had an extra player, I think they would take the series easily.
I think that's always been the knock on Luka, and maybe one of the reasons, and that's why Nika or whatever is saying that on the side that he's backtracking now, but he was saying before that he was I called him Nika because Nika. He made a mistake. Nico should have just shut up because he's hurting himself more than anything else. But he said defense wins championships. So he was looking at that in the same vein, same lens as far as Luka's not a good defensive player. He's a liability. The Lakers looked good defensively during the regular season after they got Luka. I feel like they're being exposed now because they don't have the defense. And whoever can play the best defense in the series, because Minnesota had been known, maybe a year or so ago as being a defensive team. There are times when they have lapses. That's what's going to win this game. I feel like the Lakers could still pull this out, but LeBron's going to have to pick his game up. And like you said, they're going to need to have that third person step up, whether it's Hachimura or Mr. Headband or whomever. Somebody's got to step up. So we'll see what happens there. Denver, just to transition to the next game, Denver, I don't know. Denver's always been that perennial, they can win the championship team. Boy, they don't look like it right now.
Well, you know what? What's showing up is that dude named Harden finally decided to, be a player. That's the thing for the Clippers right now. You got Kawhi, you've got the rest of the pieces there. Zubac is playing his role. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. So they got a team that's got the pieces in. Again, coached by Ty Lue, who knows how to put things together in dramatic fashion. Yes, he had to coach a drama-filled, Cleveland team and everything else to a championship. So he's not a bad coach. I'll give him credit. That said, I think yesterday was kind of an anomaly because this was the first game at the Clippers' new stadium, right, for playoffs. So there was a lot of hype and circumstance. So they won that game, and justly so. But Denver doesn't have that little extra oomph to where they were beating teams, literally beating teams. They don't have that this year. They're playing to the level of their competition, and sometimes they go cold in a game. Murray will go cold. Jokic will still be average, but he won't get the ball at times. So that it makes it tough to get consistency
I feel like you're right about I think it's the peripheral players. I'm not going to ever blame Jokic for anything because he's throwing,
he's the best
every
player.
type of stat. He's filling up the stat sheet. But
if there's
one
thing said about
the Porters,
SGA is the MVP, but Jokic is still the best player in the league, no question.
But because Jokic fills up the stat sheet, he makes his team better. One of the things I'm not seeing though is a consistency from Aaron Gordon and Porter Jr.
Right.
You need to have those players be consistent, and you're right also about Murray. He's not as explosive as he has been in the past.
Yeah, that injury from a couple of years ago. That injury from a couple of years ago, I don't know if that's playing a role or what, but he's not that. He's He's still a killer. Don't get me wrong. You get him a ball in a clutch situation, I still want him to have the ball. But he doesn't have that ability to like rattle off 15 straight point kind of thing like he used to a couple years ago.
Right. And they need that in this series or they're going to lose. Because Kawhi is old Kawhi. As long as he stays healthy, Kawhi can play.
And Kawhi is going to do quiet Kawhi things. He'll still put up 20, 30 points, and he'll be that dude. And he's getting support this year from Zubac, Harden, and the rest of that.
Yeah,
group.
from the Beard and everybody else. Yeah. So
I'll tell you, the guy that has to step up in the series, and this is a weird one for the Nuggets. It needs to be Westbrook. I mean, yeah, he's got a channel 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm tired of him. I don't like it. Believe me, I'm an anti-Westbrook guy. By all means, I say this with disdain, to say the least. But when you've got a dude on the bench or whatever it is that he plays these days, whether he's a starter or a sixth man, when you've had that pedigree of being that dude before, you need to do what James Harden's doing.
No, I don't disagree with that last part. I just feel like Westbrook. I said this at the beginning of the season. Wherever he goes, you don't win because at the end of the day, he's way more bad than good. He's got a big mouth and a big ego and all of those things. And I'm sorry, if you're depending on him, you're already lost, in my opinion.
True.
And one thing I thought was funny to see with the Clippers is that they got Paul George a year or two ago, and they couldn't do what they're doing today. Now, granted, Kawhi wasn't playing up to his ability. And I feel like Harden, as well as he may be playing, I still feel like he's a liability at the end of the day. He doesn't play defense. He doesn't play defense, and he plays that one-on-one like you're playing 21 in the park, and there are like 10 guys there, and you're playing 21 where you have to get through 10 guys to score. He's that guy. That's great when you're playing 21. That is not team ball. So it looks good in spurts, but we saw what happened in Houston. We saw everywhere he's been. It looks good for a moment, and then all of a sudden it doesn't look so good when the games count.
I mean, how many chips you got between that triumvirate that you could have had of Durant, Harden, and Westbrook all together? Think about it.
Well, you said I was going to comment on that. You said something about the team chemistry with OKC. Now, imagine if they would have had that then, but you had three really strong egos. Harden was playing the six-man role, and he felt like he was a lead role player. You got Westbrook and Durant, who both feel like they're the shit, and they are the ones who should be driving the team. And we saw what happened with that. Yep.
And you change, and you with OKC management, you stayed the course. You stayed in a team environment, and look at the fruits of that labor now. Is all I can say. And I after seeing that last night, honestly, initially I thought it was going to be kind of a toss-up between them and the Celtics. I think it's still going to be, but I'm going to give my fandom to the OKC Thunder if it gets to that championship game right now.
I agree. Plus, I'm a Bulls fan. Hate the old Celtics. Hate the new Celtics. I just hate all right. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. Real quick, looking at the Eastern Conference. So we got the Celtics sort of just doing their thing.
Celtics cruise control. Cavaliers cruise control as far as I'm concerned.
Cavaliers doing the same thing.
Knicks Pistons is interesting. I mean, I think it's gonna be a good series. Maybe it goes 6 or something. Depending on. It's unfortunate the Knicks won barely yesterday. I get it. I wish the Pistons would have won.
Sort of rooting for the Pistons too, and I can't believe that because I've always hated the Pistons, or at least from the Isaiah Pistons forward. I like Joe Dumars and stuff like that, but I just wasn't a fan of Isaiah. I knew him in person. He's a horrible guy. So I've never been a fan, but I like Cunningham and I love the story. Kudos to the city of Detroit. Just a few years ago, you had teams that were 16-0 in football, and you had the Detroit Pistons who were at the bottom of the barrel, and look at you guys now. So kudos to you for building these teams up from the draft and clever additions and subtractions to make your team a better team. So I'm just happy to see them do well. I'm always about the underdog. I sort of hope they beat the Knicks because I love Brunson. I'm not so sold on Cat. I'm not so sold.
I've never been.
And knowing Thibodeau like I do because he coached the Bulls, I just feel like he's that guy who makes your team look good enough to take out to dinner, but you never take them home.
That's exactly it.
He just doesn't know how to get over the hump because he gets too narrowly focused and he doesn't know how to use the pieces in the right way. So he says, I'm just going to use the starters and exhaust them and play them most of the game.
Yep, and I think that's what's going to be also the Knicks' demise if they make it to the next round. They're going to be worn out. You're going to play against a better team like the Cavs or the Celtics, and you're going to lose. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. That's what exactly what's going to happen if they beat Detroit. I agree with you. And all the other ones don't matter. And at the end of the day, I still feel like Cleveland can't beat Boston in a 7-game series, and I'm not sure Boston can beat Oklahoma City in a 7-game series as it looks right now. I think Boston
looks right now.
Yeah, Boston's the team to beat, but the one thing that they do that I feel like is going to be too volatile, and it can be to their detriment at times, is 3-point shooting.
Yeah, agreed. They live and die by that ball.
Yeah, so if you're shooting 30% from 3, all of a sudden those metrics don't make sense.
Well, see, and that's where I think people lost, and this is why I took the bet last night on OKC where I did. I didn't care how much they were down. They're so deep on their roster. They play 10, 12-man rotations that if you just play the math of it, don't even play the sports of it. Like you said, a 30% clip of shooting 3 points, but that's amongst their top players in Boston, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take that amongst a bench of 10, 12, whatever OKC has, and let's pretend that SGA was cold last night for some reason. You've got a Dort. You've got 3 other guys off the bench that can all shoot and spot up. So you do the math on it, you're going to still make buckets at some point. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, if somebody goes cold, they yank him, put the next guy in, let him go at it. You know, that's what makes it interesting for the OKC Thunder, I think, this season is the fact that they just got so much depth, so much faith in the team, which is why I think they're going to win. Simple as that.
I think they have the right mix from a team chemistry. They got athleticism, they got the shooting, and they got Shea. And I'm sorry, Shea wasn't dominated. It did not like he scored 50 points yesterday. And they still came back from 30 down. So that's telling you something.
Yep. So no, I think it's going to be an interesting, next couple of weeks for the playoffs. But I think we've kind of got we're kind of sticking with the favorites that we know to be true. I think the series that could be interesting, and like we've talked about here, is probably the Lakers Timberwolves. But even then, the winner of that series plays the winner of the Warriors Rockets series. So at the end of the day, they're all running into a buzzsaw called the Thunder coming from the top. So, I
don't see anybody stopping them. I'm not sure that Cleveland can stop the Celtics. So, sort of chalk on this, in my opinion. I just wanted to show this to everybody. This is my Walter Payton jersey. That's the man. I wore it yesterday in honor of the draft. And then the Bears went and drafted a tight end, and I feel like I don't really think that they did anything to really help their team. I forgot who I was chatting with on my phone, and they're a Bears fan, and I texted him. It's like, and I did this at 11 o'clock last night. And just when the Packers had picked their pick, and they took the Texas wide receiver, if you noticed, is what the Packers did. They picked their first wide receiver since like 92 in a draft or something like that. It was something I've seen. But really needed that. Yeah.
Who is supposedly the fastest dude in the draft? Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas.
Oh yeah,
and
Golden.
I was like,
yep.
And immediately the second, I'm like, yeah, Packers draft better than the Bears draft round 1.
It's just unfortunate. We just never seem to draft well. To me, I felt like a tight end isn't where we already got a good tight end. If anything, get a defensive lineman. And if you
that's where I figured they would have gone at a corner or a defensive lineman is what I was thinking.
That's what I was thinking too. But in typical Bears fashion, we do the opposite of what's obvious, and try to look smarter than we are. But I have to say, one of the biggest surprises, and they're talking about it all over the TV. I'm looking at it now. It's not on, but Shedeur Sanders. Now let's talk about him for a moment. I mean, with the first draft pick, we knew Cam Ward was going. Most of the things before we talk about Shedeur, I do want to talk about something you wanted to talk about, and then we'll talk about Shedeur since he's in the second round anyway, so we can talk about him later.
We've already been talking about it for weeks,
Jacksonville traded up to get Travis Hunter. Is that worth it? Was that worth it? Is that I heard a comment on one of the guys?
Compensation, no.
Yeah.
For the pick compensation that I saw that got traded, no.
Well, one of the guys on Get Up said that they felt like Jacksonville was now the team to beat in the AFC South. How did they make up that grounds on the Texans? No, the Texans are way head and shoulders above all the teams in that division. Heck, I think Indianapolis was better than them. So everybody was better than them last year. So explain to me how Travis Hunter helps them that much to where he warranted, trading up to get him.
See, I kind of found it out of left field. I mean, if you look at the draft compensation, didn't make sense to me at all on paper, because at the end of the day, Jacksonville also gave up their first rounder next year, which made no freaking sense.
No,
you're not a team that's one draft pick away from being a playoff contender. You're not. You're a 2-3 year type build out. So why they did it, I have no idea. Where does Travis Hunter even fold in the mix? Okay, is he going to play defense? Well, their defense sucks. So what? One player is going to make a difference at DB? No, not going to happen. He's a wide receiver. Okay, you've already got some wide receivers, and I'm sorry, but Goldilocks didn't have a great season last year throwing the ball. So
and there you go. And that's it. Because they had Kirk and a few other guys. The one rookie came in. They got guys, but I'm sorry, Lord Farquhar and the Prince Charming mixture of that he makes up and the way he looks.
Yep.
He wasn't playing well, and he might have been overrated coming out of Clemson to begin with. So
I mean, let's put it this way: when Trevor Lawrence came out of college, I thought he was actually going to be like a kind of a born winner guy, because he did what nobody else could do. He beat Alabama. You got to give him credit.
Yeah, that's all true. That's college.
Now, but he also came out of an excellently coached system, Davos winning credit given, of also a team that was loaded. You had him and you had Etienne, the same guy he's got right now in the backfield, by the way.
Right. And what are they doing with it?
Yeah. Yep. So
and quite frankly, when they first came in, Jacksonville was a playoff team.
They had a team, yeah, and they had the pieces around to do it. And since then, it's got blown up. People have left. People have been traded. Whatever it is, I don't think you have a core built out there. I don't think your coaching regime is going to do anything wonders wise. Did you get a star player that could fill the seats? Then maybe that was the move. Maybe that's what what's his name, Shad Khan, the owner, is looking to try to do, is just salvage financials at this point, because honestly, nobody goes to a Jacksonville game. I hate to say it, but that's true. The fandom there sucks. That's why they're thinking about relocating to London or whatever,
Well, and one thing that I've always questioned, and I think this is a product of college, because you can look great in college, because a majority of your games, especially if you're big time college, are going to be against powder puff teams, and you're going to play against guys that are smaller than you are, etc.
Well, no knock on Travis Hunter.
Yeah, but Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are very slight in build.
Yes,
the rigors of the NFL, and taking that hit over the middle that you didn't get hit when you were playing in Colorado, taking that hit from the blind side that you didn't get hit. I mean, well, actually, Shedeur got hit a lot last year, but now all of a sudden the guy's 300 pounds running 4.5 right at you, or 4.7. I wonder how either one of them are going to survive the NFL rigors over a course of a season or two. I'm curious to see where they are and how many they piled up.
When you bring up the perfect point, okay, Travis Hunter, yes, he was a man amongst boys in college, and in terms of just physical talent and everything else. And yeah, he wasn't like the physical specimen, but he was faster than everyone else. But here's where I'm going to throw your red flag. He was a receiver who knew he was the number one target that's going to get every ball because of his relationship to Shedeur Sanders. You're now going to go play the NFL, where you are one of 3, 4, 5 receivers on the field, whatever the heck the setup is. And yeah, you might still be receiver number one, but you're not always going to get the ball. And how does your mentality change as a player when you know that every single jump ball is yours, no matter what, coming from Shedeur, and the rapport you had with Shedeur, because you played together for many, many years, obviously, versus now you're going to go play with Lord Farquaad, and you have to start a whole new rapport with Lord Farquaad.
Well, you also have at Colorado, and they were also together at Jackson State, right?
Yes,
but
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You got a coach that you're familiar with, who has a game plan that's highlighting you guys.
Yes.
No one's going to be another diva on the team because they know their rank, right? They know where they stand. When you're coming to the pros as a rookie, you got other receivers who are all divas looking to get paid, want to get the ball. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with not being a star? And this is probably the thing, that I think is a good point you brought up. How is it going to impact you mentally, and then subsequently how you play physically, if you're not the star anymore, and you're just sort of another person on the team when he's used to being the star everywhere he's been.
See, to me, the best draft pick out of the top 10 or even just all together yesterday was honestly, and you might be surprised when I say this, it was the Raiders taking Janty. I think he's going to be the guy that has the best opportunity to succeed in year one out of all these guys because, we know historically a quarterback taking one on any team is set up to fail because of, honestly, the team doesn't have the protection around him to keep him sustained for the first year. That's always been true. Peyton Manning, everybody, we know this. That said, where we've seen success with quarterbacks is when the guy has to sit a year or two or a few games and train behind a veteran QB. Those are the guys that win. Patrick Mahomes, case in point. Even Josh Allen wasn't like the immediate fire starter for the Bills. Like he had to work his way into the system. So that's where I think Ashton Janty is going to be not the steal of the draft because obviously he's picked fifth, but I think he's going to be the biggest stud of the draft because proven winner at the running back position. The guy broke records. I don't care where he played, what all that. Dude was legit. And now he's going to go to a Raiders organization that's getting a little revamped and retooled. And more importantly, Pete Carroll's a run-heavy guy. It'll be interesting to see how he uses them.
Well, I tell you what, he could be that. He's got that rough and tumble kind of running style and with speed, that could be Derrick Henry or Marshawn Lynch. Yeah. And if Geno comes in and Geno plays the way he's been playing the last year or two, I think they have an opportunity. Unfortunately, we have to see because the Raiders have been that franchise since way back when. You take away the one blip where they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, what have they done over the last 50 years? 40 years. They haven't done a whole lot.
I have a feeling though that the Raiders are in for a little bit of a culture change. I mean, the same owners there, but now you got new management, you got new coach, new regime, Tom Brady, whatever degree you want to call that one. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays. You have to see it in motion. Don't get me wrong. I totally agree with that. But
I love the running back pick though. I love the running back pick, but remember they had Josh Jacobs. They've had some good running backs. They just don't know how to call an offense that to have a nice blend of defense and offense in the Raiders organization. If they get a good offense, they got a lousy defense and vice versa. So we'll see what happens. Now, I do want to talk. Most of the other picks sort of went as what people thought they would go, right? Giants ended up getting a defensive end. Now they're saying the Giants are all of that. Giants are sort of like the Raiders, except the Eli years, where I feel like they haven't proven anything in a while.
The problem with the Giants
they don't have a quarterback.
Well, that's the thing.
Now they do. Giants got Jackson Dart.
Yeah. Well, I think the Giants will have an excellent defense, but the problem is they play in a division where it's not going to get to shine as much. That's the problem. But their offense is still anemic. That's their other thing. Yeah.
Well, I think, there is a direct correlation between a good defense and a good defense with a good offense. And I feel like a good defense is only as good as your offense. If I'm on the field 80% of the time because we're going 3 and out constantly, even a good defense turns bad. So I feel like that's always been one of their shortcomings with having to decided that Jones was better than Saquon. So we'll see what happens with that. They did get their quarterback. The thing that I found was a surprise, and I think you're right. They're in a division where right now they got the Eagles and they're playing the Washington Redskins 2 times a year. To me, that's like 4 losses for them right away. Dallas is another story. We don't know what they are. So I'm not sure they can do a whole lot until they get their team more balanced to where they can play offense and score more than 20 points, but also be able to play defense.
I totally agree.
I think the surprise here, and maybe not that much of a surprise because, as I mentioned, Shedeur Sanders is slight. He doesn't have like a cannon arm. He doesn't have those highlights. He's not big in stature. So those are the things that they look for immediately when they're looking for a quarterback. They want everybody to be Josh Allen, right? I feel like all of the hype, did that help him or did it hurt him? Because the fact that he went back to the Giants and did another tryout, and so did the other quarterbacks, and they ended up taking Jason Dart, and he doesn't even get picked in the first round.
Right.
What is that telling you about
Well,
what people think?
I'll tell you
The
what.
Pittsburgh Steelers didn't pick him up, and they were the ones who were, started to pick him up because they need a quarterback.
You know what? I was a little shocked by that, honestly. I thought that the Steelers would make the move, but they stayed true to their Steeler roots and didn't take on the drama. So, it was an interesting interplay, I think, there. The thing with Shador is, and I joked about this, I think, last week or the week before. I think last week is when it actually happened. They retired Shador and Travis Hunter's jerseys at Colorado for having played, one season and had a 500 year or whatever, subpar career, essentially, at Colorado. I'm sorry, but
2 years.
Where do you see cachet and NFL leadership in that? I mean, again, Shador Sanders, I get it. He's a son of an NFL player. He's throwing the ball really well, but to the same guy that he's worked with for God knows how many years, right? I'm sorry, you haven't seen him outside the realm. So is he worth a first-round pick? My opinion's always been no, he's not worth a first-round pick just because of the production on the field. Now, everybody in the world's like, oh, Shador should have gone in the first round because of all the needs in the NFL. I'm like, no, then you're just setting him up to fail like every other situation we talk about here with quarterbacks just being plugged into year one, expecting to, be the grand messiah. And if there was
on a
one
lousy
scenario,
team, that's used.
Yeah. Well, if there was one scenario where I could see this working out, I thought it would have been Pittsburgh, but I guess Mike Tomlin and the boys didn't see that way. Yep.
Well, I think Mike Tomlin, as you said, was smart. And I think that there are a couple of things that hurt Shador. One is slight in his build and the fact he doesn't have those, are attributes that we look for. He doesn't shine in those areas. But I think the second thing, and probably the most important thing here, and you heard it in some of the people were talking about it, if you draft Shador, are you also bringing the Dion hype with him?
Absolutely.
And if you, depending on which team you are, maybe not Mike Tomlin, because he's in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh only has a couple coaches every 30 years, whatever. But if it doesn't work out, does that all come to you? Do you get all of the drama and that comes with the Shador Sanders entourage, if you will? I don't think that much. I think that if he was just Shador Sanders and not Deion Sanders' son, maybe somebody would have picked him.
Possible, but here's the other thing. I think this is also a long-term play. You still got Deion's other kid that doesn't get talked about because he's probably not maybe as talented, perhaps, but he will find out in the next couple of years. He's 2 years behind. Once he graduates through college and gets it, probably will get draft status of some kind. Then Deion's going to want to make an NFL move. I get it. I think it's going to happen. I think he may try to become a coach or some sort of role at the NFL level. Now, does that come as a package deal? That's the real question, And like you said, Pittsburgh's not going to entertain that kind of culture. We know that. Does it need to go somewhere else? Like a New Orleans, perhaps. And New Orleans was another team I thought would pull the trigger, but they're on the setup. They're on the setup, though, to have him succeed. So, there was interesting playouts yesterday. The one move that took place at the end of the draft yesterday, I wasn't surprised by, but it kind of pissed me off as a Chiefs fan. So, Eagles traded up one spot. And, I didn't think it was going to be much or whatever. And it really wasn't, but we did get like a.
But I was switching with us because we were the
31st. Yeah, 31st and 32nd picks. Normally things don't happen at that instant. But with who the Eagles took, I got a little irked. Not because of the player, but because they got another linebacker from Alabama. They are building a freaking machine out in Philly right now because of everybody they re-signed and kept from the championship team. They are still building on that great defense with this Alabama guy. and I don't think we were going to go linebacker. Don't get me wrong. We weren't going to go, by having that one spot, we weren't going to go linebacker. I think Andy Reid, the boys, they already made up that we were going to get our offensive line together. That's why we took the pick we did, which I was fine with. But at least we got a little and we picked up the extra 5th rounder for it. But for those of you who might be anti-Eagles fans, the Eagles just got better. That's all I can say.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting in the NFC East because, Dallas had been reigning there a little bit, but they are sorry.
Yeah.
But you look at the Eagles, what they've done over the last 3-4 years, and you look at Washington and what the addition of Jaden Daniels has brought to them over just a 1-year period, and then the additions that they made, they got Debo.
Yes. Debo.
If Debo could be a team player there, man, Debo, and they got McLaren. I don't know.
You got fire and ice right there, which is gonna be great.
Yeah. If they have any kind of running attack, that's going to be a formidable offense. And if they just have a halfway decent defense, they could score 30 and hold you to 20 and win a lot of games.
Yep, absolutely. No, that's gonna be a fun division to watch between those two teams. Now, the Cowgirls are the Cowgirls. You know, they're gonna think that they had the greatest draft ever. Whatever. I don't even know who they chose. I could care less. It's Jerry Jones at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't care. Jerry Jones will screw it up.
Yep.
I tell you what, there'll be some fireworks coming in with this whole Shedeur, and I tell you what, if he doesn't get picked up in the first few picks, it's just going to keep getting worse for him.
If he's not picked tonight in the first 10 picks, you're gonna hear some funny stuff. I mean, it's gonna be funny to see. Now, should he use that as a chip on his shoulder? That's my take. He should use that as a chip on his shoulder.
Well, that's exactly what he should do. Yeah, he has to do that because he has no other choice. But I can tell you what, when you throw a party and you got, and this is the Deion son party, right? He's got this big old thing on his chest with the dollar sign in the background. There are 50, 60 relatives and stuff. Everybody's ready to yell, and they don't get a chance to yell. What does that party look like tonight? Does he have 20 people? Does he get rid of the dollar sign? Maybe he should have a thing that has a cent sign. Because he's not going to get paid the dollars.
He's in the second round now. Right now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cents time. So we'll see what happens. I think it'll be interesting.
AKA penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I think that's, well, I don't know. That's going to be the story of the day. Second round is the second round. Really, it's about the first round in the draft where all the hoopla is.
Yeah, for me, the second day of the draft for the NFL is always where you find your defensive talent, perhaps, and more importantly, your offensive defensive lines. Always. So
they should be.
I'm more curious to see folks like my team, like our Chiefs, hopefully try to shore up the line on both ends, get Chris Jones some support on defense, get the offensive line. We're going to need another one. I think we're going honestly back to back by offensive lines. My guess is, for today.
I'd love to see it, especially when you're looking at the draft. Not everybody pans out, especially the lower you get. So if you can stock up and find out the
which is also why
diamond in the rough.
Yeah. No, which is also why I was happy that we got the extra compensation from the Eagles, honestly, because we got another fifth rounder. So we can take a gamble on another lineman, hopefully try to, see if we can find some diamond in the rough kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to see them improve. And again, our whole standing bet, I know we're about to shut down here. But my overall thing is I want to see the Chiefs and the Bears go to the Super Bowl. That is my dream matchup because those are the teams that I support. One where I was born and always loved as a little kid, and one that I grew into loving because I moved here and I was part of the Walter Payton years. So I would love to see those two teams come together and win a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, Kansas City's been doing it regularly, going to the Super Bowl. It's sort of like going out to dinner now. But it would be nice to see the Bears do a little bit more than just draft a great quarterback and not surround him with the right people to make him great.
Ryan Poles is Ryan Poles. He pulled I wouldn't call it a surprise, but another, what I wouldn't have expected kind of pick, the first round. But let's see what they continue to do with the Bears now.
Well, what is Cole saying, right? Like, you got Cole Kmet, right?
Yeah.
Why are we picking another tight end?
Well, I don't know whether this is a Ben Johnson thing or not. That's where I'm kind of confused.
That's what I heard. One of my football buddies texted me, well, Ben Johnson likes to run with the tight ends, and he likes to do this.
You're telling me that Cole Kmet can't fill the shoes of a Sam Laporta? Like, that confuses me a little bit. You know what I mean?
I think he's closer than bringing another rookie in.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what really confuses me here in this mix. I'm like, all you did was just piss off a guy. You're not going to play two tight end sets. We know that. You're not Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. I'm sorry.
I was just about to say, unless you're Belichick back in New England, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, Cole Kmet's not becoming a murderer in the offseason. So, I mean,
So we'll see what happens. I'm curious, and I'm sure everybody else is, to see what happens in round 2 and where Shedeur goes. But again, for me, it's all about what happens during the summer and what happens in some of those, preseason games. and where they're going to perform. Shador, the best place for him to go would be to sit behind a good quarterback and learn.
Yep. And for all these rookies, don't be a Rashid Rice and don't be a Xavier Worthy in the offseason, please.
Yeah, for real. But that's a promising thing, because now you got these guys coming back. You got Rashid coming back, so the Chiefs should be a lot better.
Offensively, we should be better. We'll have crazy speed, but now he's got to get the protection. Right. So, we're working on the right piece there. I think our problem is going to be defensive at this point. I think we're going to lose some talent, obviously, due to money, probably on the defensive side, where we're going to need to find like a replacement for, let's say, Nick Bolton's still there, but we need another Nick Bolton. Let's face facts.
Well, we need to keep our linebackers. Special K, we got Chris on the defensive line. You got Special K as the linebackers. Wish we could have gotten another linebacker. We'll see what happens. I think the biggest thing for Kansas City, they made it to the Super Bowl, remember? So it's about being able to protect Mahomes.
Yeah.
If you can't protect Mahomes, then you're not going to go anywhere in the NFL. That's just the reality.
Totally agree.
All right.
Now we got enough pieces in play.
Well, on that note, let's see what happens today in the draft. Let's see what happens tonight in the tonight for the draft, as well as the NBA playoffs. It's heating up. Let's see how some of these teams respond, and hopefully, you're able to play, and that shot on you doesn't take away your ability to play in the future. I don't think you should play any more this season, because you're not going to beat OKC 4 games in a row, but hopefully you get better. Same with Jimmy Buckets. Wish you guys the speedy recovery.
I'd love to see Steph put up 40 tonight. We'll see what happens.
He could.
Yep.
All right, partner.
Yep.
Wishing everybody a great day. Be your best you, and remember, we are a community, and we need to look after each other to make this world a better place.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see you guys later.
Peace out.